Classic. Excuse me. Add an inbox message for guild application is rejected. That's nothing too crazy. On to, I guess, the big thing here. Game balance, right? We talked a little bit about this earlier, and I think this is going to be something that I kind of wanted to kind of walk over a little bit. Suey is dead. I don't think there is a way for Suey to be used anymore, which is kind of sad to me. The viability of Suey has been gutted pretty hard over the last couple patches that touched on it. Suey now is completely worthless. I don't think it's usable at all. You get 0% of your gold from leaks, so the only income you're getting is just from your sends. So you have to income a ton more early, which makes the Suey not as viable. So I think Suey is just done. Gone, completely unusable in most situations. That being said, I know a lot of people are frustrated with it. To me, it's more of a sad thing because it was another way to play the game. And I think variety is the spice of life, and having different ways to play is an option. Is fun. It's is what it is. So the way it works, Goofy, is when you are full ecoing and have no units on the board, you get 0% of income leak, and 0% of the gold when leaking. So is there some viability? Like, you could theoretically go Grarl or something into full push, but I don't know at what point you would stop gaining gold from the leaks. And that's also 3. That's also 3 workers you're missing. So it's just one of those things that I just don't think it's going to be usable really at all. Badger strat, yeah. Toykin's Badger strat's now the way to do it. Frozen, I think it should be a lower tier strategy, right? Correct. I think that it should be a low tier strategy, but now with you getting literally 0 gold, I don't think it's viable at all. Me and someone else tried doing it on some low elo accounts just to see how it was back when they changed it previously, and we were struggling to beat people who were way lower. Way lower elo. Because you just don't get any value out of it unless you're leaking them hard. But at that point, those people are usually income sending heavy anyway, so it's like, it doesn't really change a whole lot. I think the problem is less that Suey was such a dominant strategy, and more that some low elos can barely hold a fucking snail. If you're leaking to a DT, you're gonna leak to 100 send. Some of the sends I get at high elo are 100 every wave, right? Like, once we get to wave 7, 8, 9, they can be income sending me 100 every time. Some low elos can barely deal with a snail every time. Like, no matter what, that's going to be a problem. So I don't necessarily think it's Suey's the issue. I think it's more or less that low elo players are just going to leak. And that's just what it is. I think the other issue is more or less people smurfing and doing this kind of stuff, right? I think smurfing is more of the issue when it comes to low elo players getting dunked on by strategies they don't understand. That, and on top of it, a lot of people are getting placed way too high of elo. You have guys who have 10 games in total in the fucking game. 10 games. And they're at Diamond. That should never happen. I'm sorry. You put someone in the game who's never played before, and all of a sudden they're in Diamond, of course that everything sucks. They're going to lose 20 games in a row because they're way too high rated. I think right now the current new player bump is way too much. Because you get boosted too much. I have people coming to my chat all the time, like Olev right now. He got halfway through plat in his first 10 games, right? You're probably going to lose a lot after that, which then discourages you from playing more. If anything, yes, you should have a slight tick in increase, but getting 50 elo like some people I've seen get for your first 10 games for every win is ridiculous. That, I think, is more of the issue, right? You have people you have people who are getting pushed way too far initially and then struggling, right? So I think that is more of something they need to worry about and fix, but that isn't also getting talked about either. I think Suey's dead, realistically. But that's just what it is. I still think we're in ELO inflation, Frozen. I have people in 2K who can barely build sometimes still. 2.4K that can barely build sometimes. Like, leak almost every wave type building. Like, you should not be leaking 50%, 40, 30, 20% even, unless you're heavy pushing like Ashton does, but they aren't. They're just leaking. I think we definitely still have a lot of people that are very, very pushed too high. And I also think that's true, Zerian. It's very frustrating, I think, when you've got people who just downloaded the game, play 10 games, win all of them because they're facing low elos, who are just bad. I mean that in the nicest way. And then they're getting up to mid-diamond or even mid-plat, and there's people who have been playing this game for hundreds of games, and they're struggling now to push through because they have a teammate who's got 10 games and can barely play, but they're facing two people who are a little bit more consistent. Olev, almost all of my guides I think will be busted. All my hard videos, Diamond AI, everything's going to be wrong. I'll have to redo all of it, which is fine. That's normal. But yeah, I think killing a strategy is kind of just sad. Period. I don't think you should ever try to kill a strategy, especially because it gives you viability of different options. But that's just my thing. I'll rant about that another time. I've talked about it before. I think variety is the spice of life. I wish Suey was actually more viable than it was in the last patch, but I understand why people hate it. I just think it's actually not nearly as difficult once you understand how to actually play against it, and I've tried explaining that to people, and when you play against it, it's actually kind of fun to beat it. But it is what it is. I think there are other more pressing issues on why players can feel cheated than Suey, because I don't think it was nearly as frequent. New players bitch that long saving's a problem. We have literally a venting post that's a copy pasta in this chat about how long saving is impossible to beat, and that the game sucks because long saving is impossible to beat. So, like, should we really trust what a player who's got 12 games says because he can't even beat a long save? Like, no. I don't think you should balance the game around a person who can barely beat a long save, when that's the same person who's going to complain about Suey. And yeah, they've been saving for a while, but I'm still pressing the Shift U button, right? Like, I don't think you should balance the game around that type of player, but that's just kind of what it is. I'm also a top 100 player, and I'm way obviously more advanced than a lot of people are. So, maybe you guys can tell me I'm full of shit, and that's okay. But I think right now that's a problem more than anything. You're going to get a lot of nasty feedback from people who don't know how to play the game because they think they're gods because they got to diamond in 10 games. But enough for my venting post. Sorry, guys. Mastermind playstyle changes. Redraw. You can see these in the other Mastermind 2.0 section. Redraw gets another reroll. You get 1 extra income with YOLO. Chaos gives you another income. You lose your reroll. Hybrid tiers are changing slightly, which is going to be interesting. Pawn Shop dropping 80 gold versus 85. I don't necessarily love this. I don't hate this. I don't think Pawn Shop's that great right now anyway, but I understand where they want to make it a little bit more a little bit less usable every time. Right. Titan health getting increased is fine. I think Titan right now is kind of shit. No one really uses it. But that's kind of it. But yeah. Changes to Dark Mage. Now, the big thing with all the fighters here is almost everything is additive now versus multiplicative. So, you need to kind of change your expectations for literally everything now in the game. Dark Mage is now multiplicative. So additive instead of multiplicative, so its buff is going to be a little bit worse on certain units, but better overall, so it's more of a mild thing now. The Unchained Rage is just gone off Chain Fist, and they just buffed its base damage, so it's a little bit less unpredictable, a little bit more usable. I don't think double auras are as strong, no, but we'll get to that. Frozen. Hellraiser Mask, Leviathan, Proton, as well as Atoms, and Radiant Halo, Arc of Justice are all now flying. They're all now flying, so they're all going to work with Tempest, which I know a lot of us have been saying we'd love some more Tempest synergies, which I think this is great. It gives us more options. I think this will give us more options for these units. That being said, I don't know how usable they'll be. So, we'll have to do some testing on all of these units to see what they hold now, what they're good with. I don't know how they're going to work. I think Leviathan is now going to be more usable in most roles. That being said, we've done a lot of these before. Mask Leviathan was just freaking disgustingly good. I think it will be in the same situation. I'm nervous about how this is going to work. I'm nervous that it's going to be too strong. But they did make it so you don't double dip on Mask, which I believe you did back in the day. It was both ability damage was increased and damage was increased. Protons and Atoms now, technically speaking, are slower in terms of their ramping. So, we'll see. Technically speaking, this guy is now worse early and better later in stacking, which means that Atom is getting a slight nerf with most builds until you go Super Saiyan with steeds on it, right? Right. Frozen, I will agree that Mass has been nerfed to the ground. That being said, Hellraiser was buffed recently, as well as False Maiden again, and currently I think they're underrated and underutilized. They're very good damage. I think they're going to be insane damage now on a lot of waves. So long as you're on a non-boss wave, I think Hellraiser, this is my bold prediction. Hellraiser with double Leviathan will be the best pierce damage dealer on non-boss waves going forward. Hellraiser not. That's my bold prediction. Because there's already times, the only thing I could say potentially is going to be better in terms of overall DPS is going to be Trinity Archer still with double buff of APS. Right? If we're talking double buffs, because that's where I'm going to say like the Hellraiser is going to be double buffed. So I think Trinity Archer will be the only thing double APS'd, well, MPS APS, the only thing that can rival Hellraiser. Granted, Hellraiser is still area of effect units, right? Hellraiser is still area of effect, so it's going to get hard countered by certain builds, certain waves, etc. 13 is still going to be a bad wave for it, but so is it for Elite Archer. Anyway, I think Hellraiser, non-tantrum or tantrumed, will be the best pierce damage in the game. It was when it had last Leviathan buff, and honestly at this point I think it's in more of a balanced spot. I think it'll be even better now, because Leviathan's 18% damage increase of a unit that already does some odd time. Sometimes like on wave 16 I'll have 10,000 damage on Hellraiser, which is ridiculous. It's close to what my Elite Archers will get. So let's see. But I think that's my bold prediction. Atoms and protons are getting just a direct nerf initially. They're getting more of a buff, actually quite literally right away. So what I said a second ago were steeds, it's actually going to be worse. So you're better off having something like a Leviathan on it to give it better stacks initially, which will do more damage early, because it very rarely is going to get to 6 to 10 stack anyway. So this is just makes it stronger early game. It's going to be more annoying to face atoms and protons early. Atoms, I think, are going to be harder to break on pre-10, which kind of sucks to me, because I think atoms are already a good unit, and I think they're already strong in terms of your ability to push early game, because they have literally no weak wave early game. The only weak wave they have is wave 9. So you have to wait all the way to wave 9 to actually leak them in some situations, other than maybe like wave 7 if you can get a mole out there, but then at that point you're starving yourself for an extended period of time to get a mole in a lot of situations. So not sure how I feel about this. The health decrease does make them a little bit weaker, but I think their damage dealing output's a lot higher early, so we'll see. They are now additive though, rather than multiplicative. Nerfs to Royal Guard and Buckler. I didn't really see these coming. I personally don't see Royal Guard Buckler utilized very much in higher elo, mostly because they fall off at a certain point. They're, I guess, okay tanks early game, but they fall off at a certain point. I don't know if atoms will be the best units for egg starts now, but they're definitely better for it. You might be able to more consistently kill a brute with atoms now. Warg getting a slight buff, as well as Lioness kind of getting buffs in general. I think you might see it now where, again, additive rather than multiplicative. Lioness 6 stack, I'm curious to see what will be total for its buffs. It's going to be 9 times 6, right? So math is hard. But yeah, I think that's what we'll end up with for the reduction. It's 9 times 6. Alpha male getting a slight increase. Not a whole lot changed here. Be 54% is what my chat's telling me. Thank you. Not a whole lot of increase here. I do think the Infiltrator and Orchid having faster projectile and faster projectile speed is good. Hear me out on this. It's good if one of two things happens. Good because it's going to get you the Infiltrator and Orchid into the fight faster, therefore giving you more damage increase. The negative I could see in this is Orchid and Infiltrator already sometimes will overkill a unit where it's already dead and it shoots it at a dead unit. If it's shooting at dead units more frequently, this is going to suck. So you might have situations where the Orchid and Infiltrator are shooting so quickly, they're shooting already dead units, and this happens, I'd say, frequently enough that I notice it. So this is something to kind of keep an eye on. Faster projectile speed should, in theory, make it so it overkills less Frozen, I believe. But we'll see. I don't know if that helps or hurts the problem. I think it's going to be interesting. We'll see. Slight nerfs to Butcher, Head Chef. I don't think these really change very much. I think this doesn't change too much. Garns, sometimes though, it's not necessarily that the projectile takes too long, it's the animation. So what will happen is the Infiltrator almost locks on to a unit that it's going to shoot at, right? So it does the animation and then shoots, right? Well, once it locks onto the unit and starts the animation, if the unit dies, it will just still shoot shoot at the unit that's dead. At least that's how I've noticed it. So it might be something that it's just visual. It could just be visual, but that's how I see it. Head Chef slight decrease doesn't really, I think, affect too much. What is huge is now Honeyflower and Deathcap are splash damage like Pyro, therefore APS, MPS now affect them. And Dark Mage for that matter. So, Flower and Deathcap now being affected by synergies and attack speed buffs. Brutes are going to slow them down, but you can do APS Flower, you can do more consistent head chef flower. Hero flower is going to work. I mean, there's a lot of options now, right? Flower is now pyro, but wider shot range. So I think you might be able to make flower APS work more consistently. The flaps meta is upon us. Flower APS meta. Flower did work with hero in the sense that it got the defensive buff, but not the offensive buff. It was doing 5.5% more damage of 1 damage, I believe. So I think this will be nice. I think it is going to make these units more consistent with what players expect of them. But at the same time, now I'm kind of concerned because now Flower and Pyro are kind of the same unit. But yeah, we'll see. Death cap on 9 is going to be better, technically, or worse. Not sure. It's now I don't know if it's a ranged splash or if it's just a splash. Because to me, this still seems like it won't be ranged. It's just a splash damage. But it theoretically should be worse if it is a range. It doesn't say. And I'm not going to speculate on that. I'm not sure how that works. If it's a splash damage, I don't know if it's ranged or not. That being said, APS buff is still huge for it. So, the attack speed was increased, right, of APS, MPS, and it's now additive. But it's weaker when stacking multiple attack buffs, otherwise stronger. So I'm curious on if MPS, APS is now overall better to do together, or if it doesn't make logistical sense to do both. We'll have to do some testing on that. If it makes sense to do MPS, APS, or if it's just better to do just MPS or just APS. That's something that's going to require a little bit of fiddling and some testing. I think Olev is a splash with Origin of Flower, yes. Which I, again, don't know if that means it's technically arranged or not. Because there's a couple units then that would be odd. Right? Holy Avenger and Sovereign getting changed from multiplicative to additive as well. Slightly less DPS at 0 to 1 stacks or at higher attack stacks paired with attack speed buffs. Slightly more DPS at 2 to 9. So I think Avenger and Sovereign are going to be actually more consistently better with no bonuses here. Right? I think this is going to be better in general with no bonuses or limited bonuses. So theoretically, Sovereign, Holy Avenger are going to be better with just, say, Head Chef, rather than having to have Head Chef and MPS on it. But Head Chef and MPS is going to be fine, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to go Head Chef, MPS, APS, Dark Mage, etc. Harpy now additive rather than multiplicative. So it's going to be higher DPS at lower stacks, less DPS at max stacks. That's a little scary to me for some of these. Because I already thought Sky Queen was good. In the sense that it's a trap unit because it's still just a single target pierce unit. But it no longer purposely won't 2 shots wave 3. So I don't know how to feel about these. I already don't understand where Harpy fits right now, because I feel like Harpy's been doing this weird thing where it's just like constant up, down, up, down, up, down. Where it's OP, then it's broken. OP, broken. OP, broken. OP, broken. So I think it's more usable without mana buff now, less positive with mana buffs. But it does stack more quickly because it, again, is going to do faster attack speed quicker. It does get mold a little bit harder now, right? With lower damage on both. Mole is more effective. But I don't know if this is going to be a positive or a negative to me. Again, I already think Heartbeat and Sky Queen are either broken or trash. So I don't know if this makes them more broken or more trash. I'd lean towards more benefit than a negative, right? More DPS early makes a unit stronger early, which is where Harpy failed to really be usable. That's where I'm looking at it as. I think, just like Atoms, they're going to be harder to break early. So Sky Queen Opener, I think, is going to be really difficult to break. I think making it from multiplicative to additive is going with what they're already saying, right? I think it's going to be kind of how they went with all these, right? Additive versus multiplicative. I think they're going to this because it's a little easier then for everyone to understand how it works. My chat's bopping in about MPS APS here. So the double buff is anywhere from 1.44% to 3.24%, depending on how you combine the APS and MPS. Okay. As I said, Arc of Justice is now flying. I already think Arc of Justice and Halo were good already. So now I think if you had to choose between a Zerker and something else, go with the Halo Arc of Justice. Halo Arc of Justice, I think, are going to be really, really good late game damage dealers now, if you can combine them with Levy. The downside to me for them is that if you want a Levy stack on them, they have to be close to each other, which then they're probably most likely going to be attacking the same unit, which we've talked about is not necessarily beneficial. Aziria now, additive. Zerker and Fatalizer are getting changed to the point that their health is decreasing, and their damage is decreasing, but their attack speed is increasing. So they're going to be less tanky, but they're theoretically going to deal more damage, kind of. They're going to be better with Butcher, right? Someone in chat said, can now stack with itself, making it stronger with mana effects. I don't know what the hell this means exactly. I imagine it's just that you can continuously spam Poda, so it can just continuously do Invigorate, so that steeds just keep spamming it, right? But I don't know. I'd have to actually see how that works in game. I don't know, Frozen, if it stacks with itself. If you could read this one of two ways. Well, every time Aziria or Poda uses its Invigorate, it will add that on top, right? So, like, let's say you had 17 steeds or something stupid, I don't know, where it's constantly doing the Invigorate. I think it would continuously add the attack speed to itself. So boom, 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 boom. And then as the timer runs off, the bottom one will fall. Right? So it'll just keep going dead, new one, dead, new one, dead, new one, right? And so if you have a ton of mana effects, I think this will go really hard. Do I know that, though? No idea. I think it will go really though, instead. That being said, I think Fatalizer, Zerker are more along the lines of usable with Butcher now, or Vampire just in general, any type of life leech. So I'm interested to see how good this would be with, like, as a Nightmare replacement in certain roles. How good Butcher takes over, how much Fatalizer and Zerker can take over for the Nightmare role. I do think, though, the balance spread will be better because just the attack speed increase in general makes it so that theoretically the duelist and brawler damage per stack are higher, quicker. We'll see. You're going to get snailed on one a little bit more, boys and girls. We need to change everything we know about snails. Snail spam is a lot better early. Wave 20 is a little worse. That's kind of it. That's kind of it. I don't know how to feel about it all just yet. But, yeah, that was kind of my long rant.